The year I turned 30, my biological parents showed up at my door to reclaim me. They wept, telling me how much they'd missed me, how sorry they were. I said nothing. The truth is, I'd known about them since I was in grade school. They had even come to see me a few times, secretly. But because the son they had raised in my place had delicate health, they couldn't bear to hit him with the cruel truth. So they put it off, again and again. They waited until I was successful, until I'd built a multi-million-dollar company from the ground up with my own two hands. I was long past the age of needing help from my parents. I watched their tear-reddened eyes, and after a long silence, I agreed to go home with them. The Vance estate was enormous. The unfamiliar house, the overly eager parents, it all made my skin crawl. It was here that I finally met the person who had occupied my life for 30 years. Caleb Vance stood behind his sister, Chloe, his face a mask of anxiety. He was unnaturally thin. It was hard to believe he'd been raised in the lap of luxury. "Ethan," my mother, Eleanor, said softly. "This is your sister, Chloe. And this is Caleb." I gave a curt nod, silent. A flash of hostility crossed Chloe's eyes. She didn't want me here. It made sense. Why would she welcome a stranger when she had 30 years of history with Caleb? Seeing my silence, Eleanor jumped in to explain. "Ethan, please don't blame Caleb. You can see his health. This was our decision." Before I could respond, Caleb, who had been shrinking in the background, spoke up. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant to steal your life." He stepped forward suddenly, grabbing my hand. "If you hate me, just hit me. I won't fight back." Before I could react, Chloe yanked him away. "Caleb, you did nothing wrong. Why are you apologizing?" She glared at me. This was his life to live. It has nothing to do with you. Tears streamed down Caleb's face as he stared at me, desperate for my forgiveness. Beside him, Eleanor dabbed at her own eyes. My father, Richard, just sighed and said nothing. They were all waiting for my answer, waiting for me to say the words, "I forgive you." But the damage they did is something I will never forget. I forced a tight smile. "If you get the chance, you should go see the man who raised you. He misses you a lot." I had known about Caleb for years. The man who raised me, my foster father, told me the truth back when I was in elementary school. I wasn't his son. I wasn't shocked. I'd suspected it for a long time. My foster parents were from the deep hills of Appalachia, short, wiry, with skin weathered by the sun. I was tall with a fair complexion, a complete alien in that small, forgotten town. We were opposites in every way. When he saw I was unfazed, he beat me again. Through his drunken rants and brutal fists, I pieced together the story. His son and I had been born in the same rural hospital. Both our mothers had the last name Cole. A nurse made a mistake. He only found out when his biological son was hospitalized and needed a blood transfusion, revealing they weren't related. After a long search, they found me. Back then, I was naive enough to think my real parents would come for me immediately. What parent could stand to let their child suffer? Even my abusive foster father, a drunk and a gambler who wallowed in every kind of filth, still wanted his own flesh and blood back. I spent that entire summer sitting on the porch steps, waiting for a car to pull up and rescue me from that hell. People walking by would taunt me. "Still waiting for those rich parents of yours, kid? Keep dreaming." By the end of the summer, the stone steps were worn smooth from my waiting. I told myself it was just a long drive from New York City. They just hadn't found the time yet. My words landed like a bomb. Chloe erupted. She shielded Caleb with her body and snapped. "Ethan, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Everyone knows that man is a monster. You want my brother to go back there and suffer?" Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh. So they knew. They knew everything. Our first meeting ended in disaster. I was given a guest room on the second floor. It wasn't large, but it was fully furnished. Everything inside was exactly what I had dreamed of as a kid. It was identical to an essay I wrote in middle school titled My Dream House. It had been so long, I'd forgotten what I wrote, but I knew that the hope I once had for a family had been eroded away by years of waiting. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her eyes filled with a desperate, pleading hope. I knew what she was doing. She wanted me to be so moved that I would forgive them for their 30-year absence. But I couldn't. I couldn't even pretend. I ripped the cartoonish Star Wars bedsheets from the mattress and replaced them with the plain white ones I brought with me. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I thought you loved Star Wars." I grew out of it a long time ago. I efficiently remade the bed. The room was a monument to their guilt, not their love. They were just trying to buy my forgiveness. Chloe appeared out of nowhere, my actions apparently enraging her. "Ethan, do you have any idea how long Mom spent putting this room together for you?" I shook her hand off me. "No. Don't you dare act like we owe you something," she hissed. "We're victims in this, too." The absurdity of it made me laugh. Then who's to blame? I shot back, my voice sharp. Me? The force of my question silenced the room. Eleanor started crying again. Chloe stood there, speechless. I wasn't what they expected. They thought I was some stray dog, starved for the warmth of a family, who would be pathetically grateful for whatever scraps they threw my way. When they realized I wouldn't play their game, the frustration turned to anger. I ignored them and continued unpacking. That night, I slept in a house I had once dreamed of, but the dream itself was long dead. The next morning, I went out for a run. Caleb was waiting for me halfway down the driveway. He was drinking a carton of milk, looking me up and down with an insolent air. "So, Ethan," he began, a smirk playing on his lips, "how do you like the room I decorated for you?" He spoke with the casual arrogance of the master of the house. When I didn't answer, his smirk widened into a sneer. Yesterday's frail act was gone, replaced by pure, spoiled pride. "Do you know why they finally brought you back, Ethan?" He blinked slowly, the mockery in his eyes deepening. "The truth is, I've known who we were for years. The first time Mom and Dad were going to get you, I injected myself with a nasty strain of the flu. The second time, I accidentally threw myself down the stairs." A triumphant grin spread across his face. "They held me in their arms and said you were a walking curse. After that, they never mentioned bringing you home again." His voice was a soft murmur, but every word was a dagger. I met his gaze and offered a brilliant smile of my own. A second later, my fist crashed into his face. Caleb hit the pavement, his cheeks swelling instantly. He clutched his face, his eyes wide with disbelief. No one had ever dared to touch him. "You bastard," he choked out. "Are you insane?" I said nothing. I straddled his chest and hit him again and again. The arrogant defiance vanished from his face, replaced by terror. I grabbed him by the collar, my voice a low whisper in his ear. "You ever wonder if you can drown a man in milk?" His eyes widened in horror as I forced the carton to his lips and poured. Caleb thrashed beneath me, gurgling sounds catching in his throat as the white liquid mixed with tears and snot on his face. Just before he passed out, I shoved him off me. He collapsed on the ground, vomiting and gasping for air. His body shook with uncontrollable tremors, pure terror in his eyes. He couldn't speak. I wiped my hands, then stuffed the empty milk carton into his mouth. Get lost. At lunch, the housekeeper called me to the dining room. Only Richard and Eleanor were there. As I sat down, Eleanor kept putting food on my plate. Halfway through the meal, Richard finally spoke. "Did you and Caleb have a disagreement?" I wiped my mouth and nodded, meeting his gaze directly. "Yes." He seemed taken aback by my bluntness, but didn't reprimand me. "You've just returned. It's normal for brothers to have some friction while they adjust. The three of you will figure out." An awkward silence fell over the table. A few minutes later, Eleanor broke it. "Ethan, you might not know this," she started, forcing a smile. "Our family has a long-standing relationship with the Rossi family. When I was pregnant with you, we made a marriage pact." She beamed. "Now is the perfect time to finalize the engagement." I let out a cold laugh. So this was it. Caleb didn't want the marriage, so they finally remembered they had another son. This was why they brought me back. I looked my parents straight in the eye. "I'll do it." Eleanor's smile grew wider. "I just knew you would." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "But I have conditions." They exchanged a look, a silent sigh of relief passing between them. Conditions they could handle. They were business people. Negotiation was their language. "I want 8% of Vance Corporation stock." My voice, cold and clear, echoed in the living room. The house fell completely silent. Eleanor stared at me, certain she had misheard. "Ethan, you must be joking." "I'm not joking," I said, sitting up straighter. "If you want me to sell myself for the Vance family, I want my payment in equity." Bang! Richard slammed his hand on the table, rising to his feet with a roar. "What do you mean, sell yourself? You're our son. The pact was made for you." As CEO, his anger was a palpable force. But I wasn't afraid. "Mr. Vance," I said calmly, "my birth certificate lists one parent. Legally, other than a DNA match, I have no connection to you." I pulled out the file I had prepared. At 18, I graduated top of my class and got a full scholarship to MIT. By my junior year, I was fast-tracked into their master's and PhD programs. At 25, with the help of my mentor, I founded my own company. In just 3 years, it became a celebrated startup, publicly commended by the state. This year, it broke into the city's top 10 gaming companies. Of course, that was nothing compared to the colossal Vance Corporation, but it was enough to prove my worth. Richard watched a clip of me giving a presentation, his expression unreadable. They knew so little about me. They had assumed I was just some uncultured nobody they could easily control. But here I was, calm and unintimidated. A humble beginning doesn't mean a life of mediocrity. I will marry for the Vance family, I stated clearly, but not for a single share less. My composure seemed to earn a flicker of respect from Richard. It was the first time he had truly looked at me as a son. The child he had abandoned was infinitely more capable than the one he had meticulously raised. He was swayed. He motioned for me to follow him to his study. There, Richard reviewed my file again. Finally, he said I could give a shot. But there was a catch. Isabella Rossi was fiercely opposed to a business marriage. If I could win her over, the shares were mine. That afternoon, I met the woman I was supposed to marry. Isabella Rossi sat in a high-end coffee shop, dressed in a white dress, exuding an aura of quiet elegance. But the sharp, calculating glint that occasionally flashed in her eyes revealed she was anything but simple. I walked up and sat down opposite her. Ethan Cole. Isabella looked me up and down, not bothering to hide her disdain. She took a delicate sip of her coffee. So, she asked coolly, are we going through the motions, or are you just going to go home now? I pretended not to notice her contempt. Let's go through the motions, I said with a placid smile. She shot me a surprised look, but only for a second. Then she stood, grabbed her purse, and walked out. I was a stranger in New York City. I had no idea where she was taking me. After a long drive, the car stopped in a chaotic, industrial neighborhood. She got out, a smirk on her face. Let me show you the real heart of the city. She led me to an underground fight club. The air was thick with smoke and the roar of the crowd. I frowned. As Isabella entered, people parted for her like the Red Sea. Isabella, you finally made it. Move it. Get out of the way of Ms. Rossi. Who's this? Someone asked, gesturing to me. Isabella glanced over her shoulder. My new pet, she said dismissively. The people around us chuckled knowingly, and a wave of crude insults washed over me. I narrowed my eyes, watching Isabella as she took her place at the front, an expert at navigating this world. She lit a cigarette, inhaling deeply with a look of pure bliss. I knew what this was. She was trying to intimidate me, to make me back down. Honestly, it was a childish tactic. Isabella frowned, clearly annoyed that I didn't look uncomfortable or embarrassed. I walked right up to her and asked softly, what kind of pet am I? She blew a smoke ring in my face, her eyes dripping with mockery. She pretended to think for a moment before saying, a canary, in a gilded cage. The next moment, before anyone could react, I, her pet, grabbed her by the hair and threw her onto the fighting ring. A split second later, a merciless combination of punches rained down on her. The entire club fell silent. Isabella, completely stunned, lay on the canvas, not moving. I licked my lips. How about now? I asked sarcastically. What are you doing? A voice roared from behind me. I turned to see Caleb standing at the edge of the stage. Apparently forgetting his own humiliation that morning, he shoved me hard. Ethan, you've gone too far, he shouted. It's one thing to bully me, but Isabella, I'm telling Mom and Dad about this. He scrambled onto the stage and rushed to her side. Isabella, are you okay? Isabella waved him off. Reassured, he turned back to me. Do you have any idea what you've done? If anything happens to her, do you know the trouble you'll be in? I laughed out loud. Of course I know, I said. In fact, I should thank her. If you hadn't turned her down because she wasn't the firstborn son, not the real heir, the family might never have come looking for me. At my words, the color drained from Caleb's face. He shot a nervous glance at Isabella, then blustered. You're lying. You're the one who stole her from me. I shrugged nonchalantly. Then you can have her back. Caleb fell silent. No one here was a fool. Enough. Isabella pushed herself up from the floor. Her dark eyes studied me with a newfound interest. You're Ethan Cole? I smiled. Isabella Rossi. We should talk. A playful smirk touched her lips. And if I say no? My smile vanished. I cracked my knuckles. Wrong answer. Try again. On the drive back, she broke the silence. Are you really his son? I gave a self-deprecating laugh. The one and only. What do you want to talk about? She asked, her tone wary. If it doesn't interest me, you know the consequences. I closed my eyes, my voice low and persuasive. Isabella, are you content being a decorative piece? A flicker of alarm crossed her face. What are you talking about? You're a Rossi, yet you're nothing more than a pawn in a business deal. Your skills are no less than your brother's, are they? I opened my eyes. We get married. I help you take control of your family's company. Unless, of course, you'd rather just be a canary. With every word, her face grew paler. Why me? She finally asked. I pulled out a thick file. It was filled with every detail of Isabella Rossi's life. Because I never go into a fight unprepared. The rest of the drive was silent. Just as I was getting out of the car, she called after me. "My dear fiancé," she said, a new glint in her eye. "How about we combine our engagement party with your official family introduction?" The union of the Vance and Rossi families sent shockwaves through New York's elite circles. Richard took me around the ballroom, introducing me to one powerful guest after another. The party was a declaration that a new era of cooperation between the two dynasties had begun. Isabella stayed by my side the entire time, playing the part of a devoted fiancée perfectly, silencing the gossip that had been swirling. Taking advantage of the momentum, she proposed that she start working at her family's company. Her father, pleased that she was finally showing some maturity, readily agreed. After making the rounds with Richard, I finally got a moment to breathe. The room was packed with titans of industry, influential partners, and a horde of media members brought in to publicize the event. Every word had to be carefully chosen. Just as I sat down on a sofa, the ballroom's sound system screeched to life. A bad feeling washed over me. A moment later, Caleb appeared on the stage, microphone in hand. Richard had been looking for him and Chloe before the party started. Now I knew why. Dressed in a lavish tuxedo, Caleb looked at Isabella with a tragic expression. "Isabella," he began, his voice shaking. "I've been struggling with this for a long time, but I have to tell you the truth tonight." Isabella's brow furrowed slightly, but she maintained her poise. "I know this is sudden, but I can't stand by and watch you be deceived. I don't want you to live with regret." His eyes were red as he locked his gaze on her. His performance sparked murmurs throughout the crowd, with curious glances darting between the three of us. Before he could say more, Vance family security guards moved in and began dragging him off the stage. Seeing their plan about to fail, Chloe gritted her teeth, darted onto the stage, and snatched up the remote control he had dropped. The massive screen behind the stage flickered to life. Before an image appeared, a man's slurred, angry voice filled the room. "You little bastard. Your daddy's so rich. How come he don't want you?" The image appeared, a burly man viciously kicking a small boy, no older than 10. "Wasted my damn food for all these years, and you ain't even my blood. You goddamn animal." The sudden turn of events captured everyone's attention. The scene on the screen changed. The boy was now a teenager, maybe 15 or 16. He was filthy, his clothes torn, his body covered in a lattice of scars. "Your real dad abandoned you. Why are you even still alive? You ungrateful parasite. I'm gonna beat you to death today." The video quality was poor, clearly old. The man's fists fell again and again, leaving the boy bloody and bruised. "You were born to be my punching bag, you little piece of trash." Another kick sent the boy flying several feet. The video froze on his face, younger but unmistakably mine. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. All eyes flickered between me and the screen. The video was just a snapshot of the beatings I'd endured for over a decade. The worst one was from that summer I'd waited for them, when my foster father would beat me and film it, trying to blackmail the Van Cess into returning his real son. He knew they were powerful and would eventually see it, so he held nothing back. The video ended with the image of the boy's body twitching on the ground. A dead silence fell over the ballroom. My most humiliating moments were laid bare for the world to see. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, a mixture of pity and scorn. Chloe's voice rang out, clear and sharp. "Isabella, my brother couldn't bear to see you deceived. I'm sure Ethan never told you he's disabled. He's deaf in one ear and his leg." Another wave of security guards swarmed the stage. Below, Eleanor was sobbing, her body swaying. She stumbled toward me and threw her arms around me, wailing, "You've suffered so much. My baby, it's all my fault, all my fault." Richard's hands were clenched into fists, his eyes blazing with fury. I stood there numbly as she clung to me. I felt no warmth, only a rising wave of nausea. It was too late. It was all far, far too late. I had learned to lick my own wounds a long time ago. I had gotten used to a life without parents. Eleanor was hysterical, and the party had to be cut short. Afterward, Chloe and Caleb stood before my father and me, their heads bowed. I looked at Chloe. "Had you seen that video before?" She glared at me with pure hatred. "What if I had?" Slap. Richard exploded. He struck her 3 times, so hard she stumbled and fell. "Have you lost your mind?" he roared. "Even if you don't like your brother, he carries the Vance name. He represents this family. This was a monumental event for the Vance and Rossi families, and you dragged our reputation through the mud." He kicked her just as she was trying to get up. "Do you have any idea how many people are watching us? Do you know what this will do to the company's stock? Chloe, you're an adult. How could you do something so monumentally stupid?" Chloe bit her lip, saying nothing. Caleb rushed to stand between them. "Dad, it's not her fault, it was me. Richard slapped him across the face before he could finish. Shut up. In the end, Richard cut off Chloe's credit cards. But Caleb, the mastermind, received no punishment at all. After sending them away, Richard turned to me to discuss how to manage the PR fallout. I was unfazed. That's not my shameful past, I said calmly. That's the road I walked to get here. I don't feel inferior because of it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. My voice was firm. The lower my starting point, the more impressive my success becomes. Instead of suppressing this story, we should promote it. In this narrative, I'm the victim. We can use this to build my brand. Richard considered this for a moment, then nodded, a look of grudging satisfaction on his face. He was a businessman first. There was no emotion between us. In his eyes, profit was all that mattered. Only after we had settled the business did he seem to remember I was his son. His gaze drifted to my ear. I cut him off before he could offer any meaningless platitudes. It's time to honor your promise regarding the stock. He stared at me for a long time without speaking. After the papers were signed, I turned to leave without a second thought. As I opened the door, his voice, trembling slightly, came from behind me. Your ear. The doctors said it's permanent. Just before the door closed, I thought I heard him sigh. I went down to the living room to find Eleanor sitting on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at me timidly, her mouth opening and closing. Before she could form a word, tears started streaming down her face again. I didn't wait. I turned and went back upstairs. Over thousands of nights, I had read countless novels about the poor child and the rich heir switched at birth. I had fantasized about the lavish life I would lead when I returned to my real family. But in none of those stories did the parents refuse to bring their own child home. The next day, my story was everywhere, the top trending topic online. My entire life was laid bare for the world to see. The media dubbed me the self-made prodigy, born to wealth, but tasted the dregs of human suffering, built an empire from nothing. As my star rose, Caleb's inevitably fell. His 30 years of pampered mediocrity were picked apart by tabloids and social media. The narrative was spinning out of control. I knew Richard was letting it happen. As promised, I started Advance Corporation. No one took me seriously at first. They assumed I was just a figurehead. With Caleb as the crown prince and Chloe backing him, everyone thought I'd be ostracized and pushed out. They were wrong. With my status as Isabella Rossi's fiancé, I was put in charge of all joint projects between our two companies. Battle by battle expanded my influence. At the same time, my own gaming company entered a new phase of explosive growth. My old mentor was running things there, so I had no worries. 6 months flew by. I practically lived at the office, rarely returning to the Vance estate. In that time, I delivered incredible results for the company, earning the respect of everyone who had once underestimated me. One evening, my phone rang. I glanced at the date and realized it was Thanksgiving. It was Eleanor, asking if I was coming home for dinner. After a moment's hesitation, I put on my coat and left the office. The Vance mansion was ablaze with light. As I approached the door, I could hear laughter from inside. In the dining room, Eleanor and Caleb were busy in the kitchen, while Richard and Chloe were helping set the table. It was as if the disastrous party had never happened. Everything was back to how it was. My arrival shattered the happy atmosphere. Richard was the first to recover. "You're just in time. We need to talk." Since I joined the company, our relationship had been strictly professional. He was impressed with my performance, and I had no interest in feigning a father-son bond. But recently, we had clashed over a major tourism development project the government was backing. In his study, Richard's face was dark. My proposal documents were scattered at his feet. We had just had a furious argument. I had called him a coward, saying things no one else would ever dare to. His rage was proof of his weakness, his guilt, his fear. He was getting old, with no appetite for risk. But I was young and hungry. A knock came at the door. "Dinner's ready," Chloe's voice called out. At the table, Eleanor desperately tried to smooth over the tension. "Caleb, didn't you get a gift for your brother? Why don't you get it to him now?" I looked up and my eyes met his. A sly smile touched his lips as he handed me a white box. I couldn't tell what was inside. Chloe, impatient, snatched it and opened it for me. The words hearing aid burned into my vision. Chloe frowned. "Caleb, why would you give him this?" Caleb clapped his hands together. "It's practical. I did my research. This is the top-of-the-line model." I took the box from Chloe. Caleb, confident I wouldn't make a scene, continued with a grin. "This model works for people who are completely deaf in both ears. It'll be more than enough for someone who's only half broken." He was reminding me, no matter how successful I became, I would always be damaged goods. I smiled. Then I hurled the box and the hearing aid, smashing them against his face. The entire reason I fought so hard was so I would never have to take anyone's crap again. It was so I could live with my head held high. Ah! Caleb cried out, clutching his face. Eleanor rushed to his side. Ethan, even if you don't like it, you can't resort to violence. I narrowed my eyes at Caleb. You're a parasite who's lived off my name your entire life. What exactly are you so proud of? I'm proud that my starting line is a finish line you'll never reach in your entire life, he screamed, shoving Chloe aside. He looked up, his eyes filled with venom. Why couldn't you just stay a poor kid? Why did you have to go to college? Why did you have to be better than me? Why didn't that bastard just beat you until you were deaf in both ears? The atmosphere froze. Caleb was hysterical, beyond Eleanor's control. Richard finally slapped him hard across the face. The family descended into chaos. I let out a sneer, grabbed my coat, and walked out. I had no patience for their pathetic family drama. But as I reached the front door, Eleanor ran after me. Your brother is just sick, she pleaded, grabbing my arm. He's afraid you'll take his place. Please, don't be angry with him. A bitter, incredulous laugh escaped my lips. Even now, after all that, her only concern was him. Decades of repressed anger finally exploded. I stared into my mother's eyes. He's all you see. Have you ever, for 1 second, thought about me? My left ear is deaf. My femur was shattered. I've had 8 broken ribs, and my arm is full of steel plates. I took a step back from her. You have no idea what my life has been like, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Every single day was a race against death, fighting stray dogs for scraps. You will never, ever understand. My raw fury stunned her. Richard and Chloe, who had followed her out, froze in place. They had never seen me like this. Since the day we met, I had been aloof, detached, indifferent. I wiped the tears from my face and began to laugh, a wild, broken sound. I could finally admit it. I hated them, and I would never, ever forgive them. After that night, everything seemed to return to normal. I continued to work day and night. Everyone acted as if that horrible Thanksgiving dinner never happened. I heard whispers that Caleb had started to take his work more seriously. Vance Corporation was now split into 2 factions. One side, mine, argued for going all in on the new tourism project, a massive gamble that could establish the company as a global leader. The other, the old guard, believed the risks were too great. The undercurrents of conflict were strong. In the end, the board of directors sided with me. Isabella was also making progress. Her brother was a tyrant, and the executives he oppressed became her allies. The joint construction project between the Vance and Rossi families had begun, a 5-year endeavor. The first phase was underway, everything proceeding smoothly under my direction. I was simultaneously managing Vance Corp's new direction and helping Isabella consolidate power within her family's empire. Unconsciously, the trust between us deepened. My late nights at the office, once a solitary affair, now often included her. Another year passed. Caleb, desperate to prove himself, led his team by cutting corners and exploiting loopholes. He made one mistake after another, earning the ire of the entire company. Meanwhile, the first phase of our joint project with the Rossi family was complete and ready for inspection. Everything on that front was a success. But with Isabella, something went wrong. I was sitting in my car when I saw her hurrying out of a hotel, her clothes in disarray. When she saw me, she frantically tried to straighten her collar. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of dark bruises on her thigh. She began, but I cut her off by handing her my overcoat. Put this on. She looked down like a child caught doing something wrong. I'm sorry. I said nothing. I'd heard that phrase too many times. That night, I went back to the Vance estate. I hadn't been there since Thanksgiving. Chloe had taken the fall for one of Caleb's biggest mistakes. Richard had protected her by sending her overseas to study. Eleanor was traveling with Caleb, helping him hide from the board's inquiries. Richard was home alone. For the first time, I approached him not as a son, but as a major shareholder and a key member of the Vance family, his equal. The company is in serious trouble, I began. The Vance family must maintain absolute control. He raised an eyebrow, but remained silent. I pressed on, my words like knives. Is Caleb capable of running this company? Can Chloe handle the responsibility? You already know the answer. If you don't back me, the Vance Corporation will soon have a different name on its letterhead. I'm the only one who can save this family. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. We talked for a long time. An hour later, a hearty laugh echoed from the study, spoken like a true Vance. From that day on, I became the majority shareholder of Vance Corporation. The project was a mess, and I was buried in work. When Isabella came to see me, I had her turned away at the door. A month later, the entire project was back on track. At the annual company gala, Thousands of employees chanted my name. In the entire history of the corporation, no one had ever taken it to such heights. With everything settled, I paid a visit to my old gaming company. In truth, it was a tiny operation, smaller than even the smallest subsidiary of Vance Corp. But it held all my joy and sorrow, my entire history. I made a quiet vow that one day, I would make it a global powerhouse. By the time I returned my focus to the joint project, it was nearing its final stages, already turning a profit. With the tourism project now stable, it was time to settle old scores. I went directly to Isabella's older brother. The moment the Rossi family pulls out of the project, I will hand you all the evidence of Isabella's corporate crimes. The next day, my engagement to Isabella was officially broken. That evening, she stormed into my office, her face contorted with rage. "Ethan, you heartless bastard." I slap her hard. "Who the hell do you think you are? Anyone who betrays me, anyone who hurts me, I will destroy." Isabella was finished. Stripped of all power and authority, her only future was to be married off for the family's benefit to some stranger, or to be cast out and left to fend for herself. In the second year of my reign, Caleb jumped from the roof of the Vance Corporation building. I heard the coroner's report was gruesome. His body was covered in injuries. His ribs were broken, 8 of them. His leg was shattered. His left eye was blind. It was impossible to imagine the suffering he must have endured. When I heard the news, I just smiled coldly. He couldn't even last a year? My foster parents were arrested on the spot, but I wouldn't let them have the peace of a prison cell. I make sure they lived a long, long time, wishing for a death that will never come. I didn't attend Caleb's funeral. For me, his death was too easy. It did nothing to quench my hatred. Eleanor drowned in her grief. After the funeral, Richard took her abroad. Chloe tried to return to the country, but my people stopped her at the border. For the rest of their lives, they would never set foot in this country again without my permission. Vance Corporation will flourish in my hands. But from now on, Vance stands for Ethan Vance.